Why are they not teaching more about money and personal finance in schools? And especially if you homeschool or home educate, like my family, my children have never been to school, then it is probably fairly high up your list of priorities of what you want to expose your children to and develop within them good financial literacy. So today I'm going in with another reaction video. You know I love my reaction videos, and this one is about the truth of why they do not teach money in schools. It is part of a longer video on a channel called Heresy Financial, which I haven't actually heard of before, but he appears to have almost 300,000 subscribers. I always love finding big channels that I've never heard of before because it reminds me that probably no one is watching my channel, and that is very reassuring. So anyway, we're going to see what he has to say. I've skipped ahead. The first part of the video, he's talking about the history of schools, how they came to be and what their real purpose is. Hint, it's all about creating workers. And we are going on to the section of why money isn't taught in schools and what he's choosing to do about that. Let's get into it.
There's a reason why certain things are not taught in school, like money. Money is freedom. Now, 100%, money does not solve all problems, but money does solve all money problems. And people are employees because they have money problems.
I would just say money solves all money problems if you know how to use money in the right way, right? You hear about the lottery winners who earn massive sums and then just go on to blow it all because they don't know how to use it sensibly. So even if you have money, you still have to have been taught how to use it to your benefit.
Here's the hard truth. If you really understand how money works, you are not going to be a work slave, an employee, for the next 60 years. That is how I was able to escape the rat race, by learning how money worked. When I was a stockbroker, I had just gotten a promotion and I joined a new team. On my first week on that new team, the team found out that the last guy who had just left right before I got there, he had retired. That's why I joined the team. Within 1 week, he had a heart attack and died. He worked his entire life, spent his entire career making one company richer, wasting his entire life for that, and took his 2 paid weeks of vacation every single year, retired, and died.
Now, that obviously sounds all quite dramatic, but I have actually heard that before, that your likelihood of dying after retirement goes up in the first year or something like that. I don't have the official stats, but it's kind of like one of those well-worn stories that goes around. And I was like quite worried because my mum actually retired last year. That's why that sort of story is in my mind, because we were talking about that, and I was really thankful that she's actually like more busy now than she was almost before she retired. I guess in this guy's case, they were so burnt out from so many years of making someone else rich that the minute he stopped and rested, it just packed in, I guess.
Truth is, if you really understand finance, if you understand accounting, if you understand investing, if you understand taxes, you aren't going to be an employee your whole life, which is exactly the reason why they don't teach it in schools. It is antithetical to the entire point of public schooling. It undermines the only reason it's there. It is there to produce a nation of workers. And if you teach them the tools they need for freedom to be able to escape that, you undermine your entire point. And instead of creating lifelong workers, you create somebody like me who works for, 10, maybe 11 years, and some of that part-time before they're able to escape.
Again, that's obviously his point of view, that the whole purpose of school is to create workers for bigger companies and corporations, and if you teach them how to make money and manage their money and build wealth, then they will no longer be feeding into that system of creating... Oh, sorry, I'm just talking to people. Sorry. Then they will no longer be able to feed into that system of creating workers. It's something I do actually go along with, like, you have to question why schools aren't usually teaching one of the most important things that you can learn about in life. Now, obviously, we do actually need workers, people to work for a system. We need doctors, for example, and if you look at people like Ali Abdaal, who's like one of the most famous YouTubers now, he started off as a doctor and then through doing his YouTube channel figured out the key to his own financial freedom wasn't actually that, and then left the profession to become a full-time YouTuber, which was amazing for him, and he's gone on to help lots of people in different ways. But obviously if all doctors went on to do that, we would be in a bit of a sticky situation. But I think that probably feeds in more to how much we are paying doctors and the conditions that they are working in, and that could probably go on to a whole nother video, so I'll leave that to process for yourself in your own mind and what you think of that.
So what am I doing instead? Many of you know that I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. I've got kids, and I'm not sending them to public schools. I'm not even sending them to a private school. And this is what I'm doing. This is not prescriptive, this is descriptive. I'm not telling you what you should do, I'm just telling you what I'm doing.
I think that's important, you know, like the point of my channel isn't necessarily to convince everyone to go off and home educate their children, but it's describing a life in which you can do that, and that is an option, which I think is what he's doing here. He's got very similar aged children to what I have. I have twins who are 6 and their little brother is 4, coming up to 4.
Today, the average kid spends 35 minutes per day with their parents. That's it. 24 hours of the day spent sleeping, spent with other kids, other adults, other people, doing other things, 35 minutes with their parents. Which means that for most parenting that happens to children today, that's done through 2 things, media and schools. And we already know what the school is trying to do, and many of us know what media is trying to do as well.
Okay, he talks like his sentences are really quickly connected, so I'm trying to jump in at the right place here. But I think a lot of you following this channel probably are already home educating your kids, and I know one of the reasons for us is that it's getting to spend more time with them. I'm sure a lot of you relate to that as well. Obviously that's not an option for everyone, but I think we have to be mindful of the fact that if, like he's saying, if we are spending a minimal amount of time with our children each day, we have to look at the influences that they are spending time around schools and the media, and they both have arguably different objectives, but let's see what he says about that.
So for me personally, I would rather be the one that gets to raise my kids, so we are homeschooling. Now look, I understand. It's a huge responsibility to do that, and not everybody, in fact, most people I would probably say could not do that.
It is a huge responsibility, he's right. I wouldn't say most people can't do it. I would probably go more to the other side of saying like more people could do it than probably realise they could do it. But he's obviously feels like he's taken steps to get himself in that position, which I'm sure he has.
But my wife and I were pretty intentional about the early years of our marriage together that put us in a position where we were able to do this. When we first got married, we spent the first 9 months getting out of debt. When we had my son, we didn't have any debt. So my wife was able to quit, she was able to stay home like we both wanted her to, and we weren't making a lot of money. At the time, we had to live off of just $2,000 per month, all 3 of us. Obviously, having no debt made that easier, but it wasn't easy.
I wonder by no debt if he's also saying he didn't have a mortgage, because that would make a big difference. I'm not sure.
Now, my wife has never had to go back to work. We've always lived below our means, and it is a lot easier now, but it was very difficult in the beginning. My kids grew older. We were able to get to a spot where I was able to quit my job and start Heresy Financial. So with me in control of my time and my wife able to stay home, we are able to use that to our advantage to homeschool our kids.
Now, I think the key thing he said there, and I'm in a similar position, is that I've been so fortunate that I haven't yet had to go back to work since having my children. And I think the key phrase he used there was living below your means, and we've done a lot of things to try and achieve that over the last, like actually particularly the last year or so. I could probably make a whole nother video on that, but we've definitely made certain sacrifices and had to really focus on what was our priority, and right now our priority was keeping our kids out of school. So I think, yeah, finding ways to live below your means is the important key phrase of what he just said there.
And my wife does most of this. She is a monster at it. She's constantly studying up on materials and curriculum and teaching methods and researching things, and she's very good at it. And our kids are now testing in between 1 and 3 years ahead of their age range.
Okay, a couple of things. I love the fact that he is so complimentary of how good his wife is at home educating. We need more fathers like that. And he obviously highlights the point that she is constantly like reading up about the latest research. And I've said before in other videos, when you start home educating and people find out, you get a lot of sort of shocked reactions like that about it, and people think you're going to do wrong by your children, you haven't thought about the long-term implications, etc. And I always say, like, people who choose to home educate have usually given way more thought to their child's education than the people who choose to put their children in school because that's just the done thing. Like, everyone I know is constantly analysing and thinking about it and like reading books about education. It's not something that anyone worth their salt in the home ed world takes lightly. So I'm glad that he highlighted that's what his wife does as well. Oh, and then the other thing, he says his children are testing ahead of their age. Like, yes, you do. Obviously, he lives in the States, I'm guessing, and I know certain states of the United States do require testing. In the UK, we don't require testing, so we don't have that same sort of benchmark. But, you know, I hear a lot of times people do say, like, because of that focused one-on-one attention, their children are ahead of their peers in school. But this ahead or behind term is a very schooly, arbitrary thing, and there's also a lot of cases where my children would be in school terms behind their peers who are in school, but we don't place that same sort of weight. There isn't the pressure of them to keep up. They have the privilege of being able to develop at their own natural pace. So I think that's amazing that his kids are ahead, but it's not the be-all and end-all of home education, in my opinion.
Where they're supposed to test for their age. So it's working. And they don't even do school all day, which kind of just shows how bad the public schooling system is in our country. Now, obviously, if they ever slip behind, my wife and I have talked about this, we would have to put them in a school because it's a huge responsibility that we are bearing on our own shoulders. And if we start to fail at that, then for our own political agenda or whatever it may be, our own ideologies, that we would be damaging our kids' potential success in the future just because we would rather have them at home instead of putting them in school? Absolutely not. We're taking every measure very seriously, and as long as they are exceeding everything that they could or would be doing in a school, then it's a no-brainer. There are absolutely things inside of the schooling system that kids learn that they need to know. Reading, writing, math, science, basically learning how to think. Maybe not how to think critically or think for yourself, but certainly some level of how to think. And then I think most importantly, there are things that are not taught in schools that kids do need to know, that we are able to make sure they get. Things like business, self-sufficiency, investing, taxes, true political history, the Bible, problem solving, communication, sales, and more.
I think that's a great list of things that kids aren't getting taught in school that they should be, and I agree with a lot of them. We're not actually a religious household, so I'm not going to be teaching the Bible, but you may teach the Bible or the Quran or the Gita, whatever religious text you follow. That is a perfectly legit reason to homeschool. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I agree with a lot of what he says. His main theory there of why schools aren't teaching personal finance is because that will create a nation of financially free individuals and not ones that have to go and work for corporations and make big businesses richer. What are your thoughts on that? I would be really interested to get into a chat in the comments. There are obviously other theories as to why finance isn't getting taught in school, such as schools simply not having the financial resources to do so, teachers not having the financial knowledge to pass on themselves because they were never taught it in school. If you have any other theories, let us know in the comments as well. But obviously I think it's something we can all agree on. It should be being taught more in schools from a much younger age as well. If you like these sort of reaction videos, I will link to the playlist because I have several other ones over there that I think you'll find interesting, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.